A 4-year-old, his body marred by disability, was subjected to his stepfather's brutal cruelty and abandoned to the mercy of a cold, rainy forest. As hope dwindled and death seemed imminent, a billionaire emerged from the darkness. Witnessing the child's fragile life flickering on the frigid ground, his eyes reflected both sorrow and a burning anger, and he spoke the words that would change everything. "You deserve to live." Dark clouds churned ominously above Creswell, the wind howling through the ancient oak trees as if foretelling some terrible event. The lone wooden house beside Highway 99 seemed swallowed whole by the bleak, chilling landscape. Inside, the dim yellow light illuminated the innocent face of Eli Carter, a boy of only 4, small and frail, with a slight limp in his left leg. He sat huddled on the floor, back pressed against the peeling wooden wall, clutching a tattered teddy bear, missing one eye. The only thing left of his mother. The door burst open. A dry, grating screech filled the air. Buck Thompson appeared like a storm, a burly man in a battered cowboy hat, crumpled shirt, hands stained with motor oil, and the pungent smell of whiskey assaulting the senses. He slammed a set of keys onto the table, bellowing, "Still sitting there, you cripple. I told you to scrub the floor clean." Eli flinched. He scrambled to his feet, his left leg dragging slightly in pain, his voice barely a whisper. I'm almost done. It's just... my leg hurts a little." Crash! The beer bottle in Buck's hand slammed down on the table, shattering. Shards of glass scattered across the old linoleum floor. "I don't need to hear your whiny voice," he hissed, eyes bloodshot. "You're a good-for-nothing. Your mother died giving birth to you, got it? Now I'm stuck raising this burden." Eli took a step back. His small hands tightened around the teddy bear, as if it were the last life raft in the ocean. But Buck had seen it. He strode forward, snatching the bear from Eli's grasp and hurling it against the wooden wall. The bear fell to the floor, lying still in the shadows. "No! Please, no!" Eli sobbed, lunging to retrieve it, his hands trembling. Buck wouldn't let it go. He grabbed Eli by the collar, dragging him roughly into the center of the room. "You hear me? If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be stuck in this godforsaken place. I could be living like a real human being. I'm sorry. I'll clean the floor. I'll be good." "How many times have I heard you apologize?" Buck roared. "Don't you get it? You shouldn't even exist." Eli collapsed. His forehead struck the edge of the table, a small trickle of blood oozing out. But this time, he didn't remain silent. He spoke, his voice weak but firm. "My mom said she loved me. Even though I was crippled, she still cared. You're not my dad." The air in the room suddenly thickened. Buck froze. Then he burst into laughter, a dry, twisted, chilling laugh. "What did you just say?" He bent down, his face inches from Eli's. "You dare tell me I'm not your father?" "Because you don't love me." Eli trembled, blood trickling down his cheek. "You think a piece of trash like you knows what love is?" Buck screamed. He seized Eli by the collar, lifting him off the ground with one hand. The boy struggled, his legs kicking wildly in the air. Then, abruptly, Buck dropped Eli to the floor like discarding a broken toy. "Fine. You say I don't love you. Get in the truck now." Where are you taking me?" Eli stammered, his voice shaking. "To where you belong. Where no one will hear you cry." Buck threw his jacket over his shoulder, yanked the door open. The wind began to howl harder, the sky growing ever grayer, as if even the heavens couldn't bear to witness this scene. Eli was shoved into the back seat of the beat-up pickup truck. He didn't dare ask anything more. He just clutched the teddy bear, now covered in mud, to his chest. "I'll be good. I'll clean the floor. I won't cry anymore. I don't need much to eat." Buck said nothing. He fastened his seatbelt, turned on the headlights, and slammed on the gas. The truck roared to life, speeding onto the dirt road leading into the Oregon forest, a place no one ventured into in weather like this. But Buck drove on, because he didn't care. Eli looked out the window, tears mingling with the rain, streaming down his face. His small heart pounded wildly. Each turn, each jolt brought a greater fear. Would he abandon him in the woods? Was this the place his mother had described in her nightmares? The truck tore through the wind. In the sky, a sudden clap of thunder echoed, lightning flashing on the horizon, as if tearing open the atmosphere, heralding an approaching storm. In the back seat, Eli clutched the bear tightly. He didn't know where he was going, but he knew, this time, no one was coming to save him. The grey sky blanketed the thick layers of clouds as if about to collapse. The Willamette forest darkened, no longer distinguishing between the shadows of trees and the darkness of night. Only the sound of rain pounding on the leaves and muddy forest floor. The black pickup truck skidded through a curve, headlights sweeping across tree trunks covered in wet moss. Then it stopped abruptly, the rear wheel sinking halfway into a mud puddle, water spraying everywhere. Buck Thompson slammed the car door, jumped out, soaking wet, the smell of alcohol still strong. He went around to the back, opened the door, and yanked Eli out of the back seat. "Get out of the car, you useless thing," he roared, his voice tearing through the wind. "This is where you were born to die." Eli was thrown onto the soggy ground like a sack. The boy groaned, his legs trembling, unable to support his body weight. His thin t-shirt was soaked, his hair stuck to his forehead, his eyes wide with cold and fear. "Uncle Buck," he cried, his voice breaking, "don't leave me. I'm sorry. I'll be good. Don't leave me." The sound of rain drowned out the pleas. Buck kicked the teddy bear away, sending it flying into a pile of wet, decaying leaves. "I don't need your apologies. I need you to disappear," he hissed. "You're a useless cripple. You ruin everything." Eli covered his head, trying to crawl towards the bear. But Buck wouldn't let him. A slap landed on his face, so hard that Eli rolled onto the ground. His face was covered in mud, his lip bleeding. The boy lay motionless for a few seconds, then tried to lift his head, his eyes blurring. "You said Mom didn't love me. But I remember Mom saying, 'You are a gift, even if you are not perfect.'" His voice was barely a breath. "I'm not trash." "Shut your mouth," Buck growled, about to deliver another blow. Suddenly, headlights from a luxury car swept over, shining directly on the scene unfolding. The blinding light made Buck stop, his eyes squinting in discomfort. The Mercedes stopped on the side of the road. The door opened, and a man stepped out. He was tall, straight, his salt and pepper hair wet from the rain, but his face exuded an unusual calmness. A black overcoat fluttered in the wind like a character stepping out of a movie. It was William Hargrove, a real estate billionaire, a man who usually appeared on the covers of financial magazines rather than on dirt roads, who had just left a state-level economic event in the city of Eugene. His speech on restructuring the post-crisis housing market brought the entire auditorium to its feet in applause. But immediately afterwards, the reporters rushed in like a breaking wave, holding up microphones, flashing lights, and questions upon questions. William couldn't stand the noise for long. He quietly left the event, got into his familiar black Mercedes, and told his assistant to cancel all interview schedules. He didn't go home via the highway as usual. He chose the shortcut, quieter, rougher, but leading straight through the Willamette forest to his private mansion on the lake near Seattle. Just a few hours of silence, he thought to himself. Just a stretch of road no one knows about. He didn't expect that on that road he would see a terrible scene that he couldn't ignore. "Stop it right now." His voice was deep, clear, and cold. Buck turned around. He raised his eyebrows, his voice contemptuous. "It's my family matter. It's none of your business. You are hitting a child, in the forest, in the rain." The man took a step forward. "And you call that a family matter?" Buck chuckled. "He's my son. I'm teaching him a lesson." The man didn't answer. He looked at Eli, a child lying huddled, covered in mud, blood on his mouth, his lips pale. The small body trembled. The waterlogged teddy bear lay a few meters away. He turned to Buck, his eyes changing, from calm to cold as steel. "This is not teaching. This is abuse. If you don't stop, I'll call the police." Buck glared. "You think I'm afraid of your phone?" The man took out his phone and held it up. "William Hargrove. I'm calling about a man abusing a child under the age of 5 in the Willamette Forest. Maybe he needs to be educated on the law." The words fell like a rock in the middle of a lake. Buck froze. That name, Hargrove, was not unfamiliar. He had heard it on TV, in financial news. A tycoon, assets of billions, with relationships spanning from the government to the press. "Who do you think you are?" Buck snarled. "A rich guy playing the angel?" William stepped forward, saying nothing. He knelt down next to Eli, took off his coat and covered the freezing child. The rain continued to fall. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice softening. Eli opened his eyes slightly. His lips trembled, trying to say softly, Eli. Carter. ... William gently squeezed the boy's shoulder, his eyes as gentle as a light in the night. Then he stood up, turned to Buck. "Last time. Get out of here, if you don't want to see your name on the 6 a.m. news." Buck gritted his teeth, his eyes full of hatred. But then he stepped back, throwing a deadly look at Eli. "You are the unluckiest kid I've ever met." He got into the car, slammed on the gas, the wheels taking mud and rain with them, rushing into the forest. The forest fell silent again. William picked Eli up. That small body was icy. His breath was weakening like a dying candle. "You'll be okay," he said, softly, holding him tight. "No one will hurt you anymore. I promise." Eli's eyes closed. A tear rolled down his cheek. Maybe it was rain, maybe not. "Too cold?" William opened the car door, carefully placed Eli's cold, small body on the back seat, and took a thick blanket from the trunk to cover him. His face was pale, his breath faint. Without hesitation, William took out his phone and speed-dialed. The phone only rang once. "Harold, it's me, William." His voice was low but decisive. "I need you to come to the mansion right away. A child is in critical condition." He paused, glancing at Eli, huddled under the blanket. "No time to ask. Bring everything you need. Meet me in 30 minutes." Without waiting for an answer, William hung up and got into the driver's seat. The Mercedes roared to life, rushing into the rain, the wheels sweeping water to both sides as if cutting through fate. In his heart, a silent anger, colder than the storm tonight, but also in it, a light just beginning to shine, a child about to die in the forest, a man who stopped just in time. Fate, sometimes, begins in the very place that no one expects. Outside the quiet mansion nestled under the old fir trees on the outskirts of Seattle, the morning mist covered every window pane, reflecting the soft yellow light. A gentle breeze stirred the white curtains, making the space seem to stop, eerily silent. In the room on the second floor, Eli Carter lay quietly on the large bed, his small body almost lost in the pile of soft blankets. He had not woken up. More than 12 hours had passed since William had taken him out of the forest. The bedside lamp had been on all night, its gentle light covering Eli's pale face, as if the whole room was trying to soothe the wounds in the child's soul. Dr. Harold McLean, who had been with William for over 10 years, carefully placed the stethoscope on Eli's chest. His face wrinkled after each faint heartbeat. "The boy is severely malnourished, William. His body is dehydrated. His body temperature has dropped, almost causing a cold shock. His whole body is bruised. Many wounds have not had time to heal before new ones appear." William stood next to him, silent. His hands clenched, his eyes never leaving the child, who was breathing hoarsely with each fragile breath. Harold took off his gloves and looked directly at him. "I need to ask, what are you going to do with this child?" William didn't answer immediately. He sat down on the chair near the head of the bed, placing his hand on Eli's cold hand. The wind outside whistled softly through the window frame. "I have enough assets, enough power, but I have never had anyone to call someone who needs me, until now." He turned to look at the doctor, his eyes clear and determined. "I will be his protector. From today." Harold sighed and nodded. "Then I'll stay here for a few days. We need to monitor him closely. The boy's body is so weak that even a fever is enough to take him away." William nodded. He knew, but deep down, a smouldering belief was kindling. Eli had survived the rainy night in the forest, which meant he was fighting. Near dawn, William still hadn't left the room. He sat there, reading every small expression on that innocent face, as if afraid of missing a blink of an eye. And then a slight movement made him hold his breath. Eli twitched his fingers. William immediately leaned closer. The boy's eyelids trembled, then opened, slowly, weakly. The small pupils were cloudy, as if covered with moisture. The look was lost and fearful. "Eli," William whispered, "can you hear me?" The boy blinked. Then his lips moved. The sound was as broken as dry leaves. "You won't hit me, right?" The question fell like a knife cutting across the heart. William gently squeezed the boy's hand, his voice trembling. "No, I will never hit you." Eli didn't say anything, but tears quietly welled up in his eyes, soaking into the pillow. He closed his eyes, his lips moving slightly. I'm sorry for being weak." William bent down, pressing his forehead to the boy's hand. "No, Eli, you are stronger than anyone. You have lived. That is extraordinary." No one said anything more. But in that space, something had changed. No longer was it a child being saved. No longer was it a stranger helping. From that moment on, between them, a string formed, invisible, not of blood, but stronger than any bloodline. That afternoon, when Dr. Harold left the room to call the nurse, William stayed with Eli. The boy was more awake, but his body was still very weak. He didn't dare move, only dared to look at the man sitting next to him with a look of both curiosity and caution. "Who are you?" "William," he replied, "but you can call me Uncle Will." Eli bit his lip. "Why did you help me?" "You don't know me." William didn't know how to answer. A person like him, who had stood before thousands of people at conferences, who had answered live interviews on television, was now flustered by a question from a 4-year-old child. He took a deep breath. "Because I used to be a child like you." Eli was surprised. William smiled and nodded. "No one believed me. No one stood by me. I was also cold, hungry, and thought I wouldn't live to see tomorrow." "So, you survived?" William nodded. "Thanks to a good person. That person took me out of hell, just like how I took you out of the forest yesterday." Eli was silent. He pulled the blanket closer to his chest, his voice so soft that he had to strain his ears to hear it. "So now, where am I?" "My house," William replied immediately without hesitation. But this can also be your house if you want. From today, you don't have to be afraid of anyone anymore." Eli looked at him for a long time. Then he nodded slightly. Without another word, the boy closed his eyes and fell asleep. But this time, it was a peaceful sleep. William sat back, his eyes no longer as heavy as before. He reached out and gently pulled the blanket for Eli. Outside, Seattle welcomed a cloudy afternoon. But in that room on the second floor, the sun had just risen, in the heart of a child, and a man who thought he had closed his heart forever. Early in the morning in the suburbs of Seattle, sunlight streamed through the oak trees, shining into the large window in the dining room of Hargrove Mansion. Gentle warmth filled the room, soothing the cold of the early winter days. Eli sat at the table, his legs swinging lightly under the chair, his eyes looking at the plate of eggs and toast in front of him. He was more awake after a few days of lying still, but still kept his old habits, not saying anything, not smiling, and never eating all of his portion. William sat opposite him, the morning newspaper on the table, but he couldn't read a single line. His eyes were still following Eli's every move. The boy's plate was still half full. Eli put down his fork, his hands wrapped around his chest, his eyes going silent. William asked softly, "You don't like this dish?" Eli flinched and shook his head quickly. "Yes, I like it." "Then why don't you eat it all?" The question made the atmosphere sink. Eli lowered his head. His small fingers clenched his shirt. After a long time, he whispered, "At Buck's place, if I ate it all. He said I was greedy. And then he hit me." William was speechless. The simple sentence was like a knife twisting deep into his chest. He stood up, went around behind the chair, and sat down next to Eli. He didn't rush to say anything. He just gently put his arm around the boy's shoulder. "Here, you can eat it all. No one will hurt you anymore. Not even me." Eli didn't react, but his shoulders trembled slightly. A tear fell on William's shirt. Then another tear, and then the whole small body burst into tears in silence. No screaming, no writhing, just stifled sobs, as if years of repression had finally found a way out. William squeezed the boy tightly. He didn't ask anything more. He just sat still, gently patting his back, in a way that no one had ever done with Eli. That evening, William brought Eli a new pair of slippers, the type with small bear shapes, as soft as clouds. "I saw your feet were cold," he said. "Try them on and see if they fit." Eli took the slippers with both hands, cherishing them like a precious gift. But when he was about to put them on, he stopped. His face tensed, his eyes lost. "What's wrong?" William asked. "My feet are very ugly," Eli whispered. "Mom used to say she would buy me shoes, but she's gone." Buck said, "Cripples don't need shoes." William sat down, took the boy's thin, scarred feet. "I think these are the bravest feet. They took you out of the darkness, and they deserve to have the most beautiful slippers in the world." Eli bit his lip. He didn't answer, but he put on the slippers. For the first time, not hiding his feet. He stood up, slowly taking small steps. William didn't say anything, but he knew it wasn't just walking. It was the first time Eli dared to step out of his own shame. Day after day, Eli gradually opened up more. He no longer flinched every time there was a loud noise, no longer startled when William entered the room. But there were still times. He froze when he heard the sound of the door lock turning, or when William left the house without saying anything. Once, William returned from a meeting and found Eli sitting in the corner of the room, hugging his teddy bear, this time washed and sewn up, his eyes absent. "Why are you sitting here alone? I thought you left. You thought I would abandon you." Eli nodded slightly, then lowered his head. William stepped forward, kneeling in front of him. "If one day I need to go away, I will tell you in advance. And no matter where I go, I will come back. Because now, you are a part of my life." Eli looked up, looking directly into William's eyes, for the first time not avoiding, for the first time trusting. That night, when William was reading in his study, a light knock sounded. "Come in." Eli poked his head in, holding a piece of paper folded in quarters. "I drew for you." William smiled and took it. In the painting, there was a house with a red roof, a silver-haired man standing next to a boy holding a teddy bear. On the roof of the house, the scrawled but clear words, "The house of me and Uncle Will." William squeezed the piece of paper in his hand. His heart tightened slightly, not with pain, but with warmth. "Thank you, Eli. I will always keep this painting." Eli smiled. A small, shy smile, but the first smile that William had ever seen from that boy. A deep wound is not only in the leg, it is in the heart. But now, that place has begun to heal. The gloomy afternoon in the outskirts of Bend, Oregon. The wind swirled red dust across the rusty sign of the old Red Rooster bar, where the dirty windows were plastered with cigarette ads and losing lottery tickets. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of cigarette smoke and cheap beer. The ceiling lights flickered, as if gasping for breath. Buck Thompson sat in the darkest corner, his leather jacket damp with sweat, a glass of cheap whiskey in his hand, his eyes glued to the newspaper spread out on the table. The headline was printed in bold: "Billionaire William Hargrove rescues a mysterious child in the forest." Below was a photo taken from a distance. William Hargrove carrying a small child wrapped in a blanket, the man's face clearly showing worry and protection. Under the car's headlights, Eli's small body was almost lost in that embrace. Buck didn't read on. He didn't need to. He threw his head back and laughed dryly, hoarsely, like metal rubbing against stone. "You're still alive, kid." His rough fingers tapped rhythmically on the beer-stained wooden table. "And you're in the hands of the richest old man in the state." He flicked the newspaper, letting it slide to the side. His eyes narrowed, shining like snakes crawling in the night. "That kid is worth more than I thought." Next to him, a drunk sitting nearby asked curiously, "What's wrong, Buck? Do you know the kid in the newspaper?" Buck didn't turn around. "I don't just know him. I raised him for 4 years. You think I'd let him sneak into a mansion without doing anything?" "What is it?" "I'm telling you, rich people only need to be involved in a scandal of kidnapping an adopted child or illegally fighting for custody, and it's a big deal. If you know how to play the cards right, you can make a lot of money." The guy next to him laughed. "You're going to sell him?" Buck glanced over, his gaze as cold as steel. "I don't sell people. I'm claiming my parental rights." He emphasized each word, full of scheming. "A rich guy like Hargrove would rather spend a few $100,000 than have the press dig into his private life, right?" He smirked, pulled out his old phone, and started dialing. The screen was cracked, but still enough to make a call. He put the phone to his ear. "Hello, it's me, Buck. I need a lawyer, the kind who doesn't like to ask too many questions, but is good at getting money." At the same time, at Hargrove Mansion, Seattle, William was in the study, while Eli was in the backyard, playing with some wooden sticks and a small squirrel. The boy giggled as the squirrel jumped onto his shoulder. It was a rare sound, which had never existed in his life. On the desk in the study, an iPad was open to the news page. William had just finished an online meeting with partners in Europe. His eyes accidentally glanced at the prominent headline, "Humanitarian Heart or PR Plan." William Hargrove, and the mysterious boy are causing a sensation on social media. He frowned. Although he was used to the media, having Eli put up as a phenomenon made him uncomfortable. Eli was not a PR tool. The boy was human. He was a creature learning to believe in the world. William turned off the screen and stood up to walk to the backyard. "Eli, come inside. It's going to rain." Eli ran over, limping but his eyes shining. "Uncle Will, that squirrel is like me. At first it was afraid of everyone, but now it's used to it." William chuckled. He rubbed the boy's head. "Yeah, and you're like me too. At first you were scared, but now you're braver." "Yes, because you don't scold me." Eli took his hand, a small hand, getting warmer every day. But that peace didn't last long. That evening, when Eli was asleep, William was reading documents in his study when the phone rang. Unknown number. He hesitated for a few seconds and then picked up the phone. William Hargrove speaking. "Long time no see, Mr. Hargrove." A man's voice, hoarse and slow, rang out, full of mockery. William squeezed the phone. His heart sank as if being pulled to the bottom. "Who is this?" "It's the person you forgot to thank. My name is Buck. Buck Thompson." William stood up abruptly. His heart sank as if being pulled to the bottom. "What's the purpose of your call?" "Not long. I am the legal father of that child, and I want him back with me," Buck scoffed. "But I'm a reasonable person. Just give me a thank you, and I'll disappear. Forever." William was silent. Then he asked, "How much?" 500,000. I'm not greedy. I just want to be a father properly." William smiled faintly. "You're not a father. You're the nightmare in the boy's soul." "Be careful with your words, my friend. I have a birth certificate. I have photos. And if I open my mouth, the press will dig everything up. And you're a kidnapper." The call ended. William put the phone on the table, his face grim. He walked to the window. Outside, Eli was sleeping soundly, hugging his teddy bear. An idea flashed in his mind. If Buck came back, would he be able to keep the boy safe? In another place, Buck sat chuckling in the bar, his phone in front of him, a half-burned cigarette between his fingers. "You think you've won, Hargrove?" He glanced at the photo of Eli in the newspaper. "I've only just begun to play." His smirk and cold eyes made it impossible to guess what he wanted to do next. The Seattle sky was grey, rain falling like silver threads, blurring the windows of Hargrove Mansion. The large gate, covered in matte black paint, stood silently like an old guard waiting for something terrible to happen. William had just returned from the office. He shook off his wet overcoat, nodded to the gardener, and walked straight into the hall. Before he could take off his shoes, the gate bell rang, urgently, persistently, like the knock of fate. The butler ran out, but before he could say anything, William had quickly reached the camera screen outside the gate, and he froze. The man on the screen was Buck Thompson, but no longer the dirty drunk in the forest. Buck today was wearing a white shirt, collar-buttoned, hair neatly combed, face clean-shaven, even wearing a tie. He stood up straight, carrying a leather briefcase and an envelope. The gate opened. William stepped onto the porch, his arms crossed. "What are you doing here?" Buck gave a polite smile, but his eyes were as cold as steel behind his glasses. "I'm here in a legal capacity. I am Eli Carter's father, and I've come to take my son back." The words fell on the yard, like bullets fired in broad daylight. Before William could react, a shrill scream rang out from the backyard. "Don't let him in! He'll kill me!" Eli ran out of the flower bed, his face pale. The boy hid behind William, his hands clenching William's shirt until it turned white. William bent down. "It's okay, Eli. I'm here." Buck still kept his smile. He raised his hands, as if to prove he was harmless. Children sometimes imagine too much. It's just a misunderstanding. I just want to take the boy back and raise him properly. Raise him? William clenched his jaw. By beating him, starving him, and throwing him in the forest on a rainy night? Buck sighed, shaking his head as if William was being unreasonable. You misunderstood. That night, I just wanted to give the boy a lesson. Teach him how to survive. Sometimes parents have to be strict. William took a step forward, his eyes as cold as swords. You're not a father. You're a ghost. But the law doesn't say that, Buck replied, his voice becoming sharper. He took out an old file from his briefcase, pulled out a yellowed piece of paper that had been laminated. Birth certificate. With my name. With his mother's name. No one else. William stared at the paper. His heart slowed a beat. Buck triumphed. The law is the law. No matter how well you take care of him, you're still not the one who has the right to decide. Eli squeezed William's hand tighter. The boy trembled. His eyes were filled with tears. I don't want to go with him. Buck looked at Eli, his smile fading. Son, come with Dad. I won't hit you anymore. I swear. Eli hid his face in William's stomach, sobbing. He's not my dad. Uncle Will is my dad. William bent down, kneeling in front of Eli, putting his hands on the boy's shoulders. I won't let anyone hurt you. Not even the one who calls himself your legal father. Buck took another step. But this time, William stood up, blocking in front of Eli like a solid wall. This is my home. And in my home, safety is non-negotiable. Okay, Buck snatched back the birth certificate and put it in his briefcase. You want to go to court? I'm ready. Let's see, in front of the press and the court, who is the legal one. He turned to leave, but before stepping through the gate, he threw back a sentence dryly. Remember, Mr. Hargrove, love doesn't always beat the signature on paper. Or simply, you can consider my offer last night. Think carefully, Mr. Hargrove, but don't take too long. I don't have much patience. With that, Buck turned away with a smirk. The gate slammed shut behind him. William stood still. Eli looked at him, his voice trembling. Will he take me away? William shook his head. He sat down, holding the boy tightly. He may have the papers, but I have you, and I will fight. That night, William sat in his study in front of a laptop screen illuminating his pensive face. His personal lawyer, Lisa Grant, a sharp black woman with a wealth of experience, was presenting via Zoom. We need to file an urgent petition for temporary protection. Otherwise, he can use the documents to force the authorities to intervene. I don't care how complicated the law is, William said. I just need one thing, to keep Eli safe. Lisa nodded. I'll take care of the legal part. And you, prepare yourself. The court will turn everything over, both your past and the child's. William looked out the window. Outside, it was raining again. But inside, a fire was burning. A man who didn't believe in family. A boy who didn't believe in anyone. Now both were facing a battle for the kind of love that wasn't in the blood, but was deeper than any bloodline. Night fell quickly on the city of Seattle, neon lights starting to reflect on the wet sidewalks, reflecting into streaks of light as if dragging memories. The Rusty Pint Bar was nestled on 14th Street, where nameless people came to forget a lifetime of failure. Buck Thompson sat at the back table, his glass of cheap wine half empty. He put on his usual face, sloppy, his eyes waiting to collide, as if the whole world owed him something. The bar door burst open. Cold wind rushed in, following the footsteps of a man in a black overcoat. William Hargrove. He recognized him immediately. You came to make a decision about that offer? I hope you will make a wise choice, Buck smirked. William said nothing. He pulled up a chair, sat opposite him, and placed a thick file on the table, along with a compact USB. "I didn't bring money," William replied, his voice calm. "I brought the truth to you." Buck scoffed, raising his glass. "You think I'm afraid of numbers and papers?" "I think you should be afraid of yourself," William replied, and opened the file. The first page was a complaint from a single mother in Boise. "Buck Thompson, ex-boyfriend, once beat my child until he broke his arm for spilling a bowl of noodles." The next page was a photo of a girl's injury assessment, along with a statement. "He made me sit in the rain to learn how to endure like an adult." William flipped through. Confirmation from a Maplewood market owner. "I used to see him make a child with a leg disability crawl on the market floor, holding a hat asking for money. If he didn't have enough $20, the boy wouldn't get dinner." Finally, William placed the USB on the table. "Inside, here, is a clip of you kicking Eli in the leg. A passerby recorded it." The atmosphere in the bar cooled down. Buck put down his glass, his face changing color. "Who allowed you to investigate me?" "The law," William replied, his eyes not blinking. "And love." Buck laughed crookedly, but this time there was no winning look. He looked at the file, then looked at William. "So what? What are you going to do? Call the police?" William nodded. "I can. And with this evidence, you'll go away for at least 5 years. But I'm giving you a chance." Buck narrowed his eyes. "What is it?" William leaned in, his voice lowered, but enunciating each word. "Get out of the boy's life. Forever. No lawsuits, no demands, no coming near him again." Buck raised his eyebrows. "If I refuse?" William tilted his head, his eyes as cold as a razor blade. "I'll make you famous in a way you never wanted. You know I have that ability. You think someone like you can go up against me? I have close relationships with the press and the courts. You won't just lose custody. You'll lose the right to exist normally in this country." "You mean, I'll make sure you never set foot on American soil again. A guy who has abused children 3 times, who has used children to beg, now wants to extort money from a billionaire. Believe me, there will be no way for you to live in peace." Buck choked. After a moment he laughed, weakly, brokenly. "I should have thrown that kid deeper in the woods." William stood up. "It's a good thing you didn't, because if you did, I'm not sure I would be sitting here talking to you politely." He bent over, picked up the USB and the file. "You have 3 days. Either disappear yourself, or disappear from real life in the literal sense." Buck sat back alone. He drank his glass of wine, but the bitterness this time didn't come from the alcohol. Outside, William walked into the rain, not carrying an umbrella. He walked straight, his steps heavy but firm. The ghost of the past had been brought to light, and he would do everything to keep it from ever touching his son again. At Hargrove Mansion, Eli sat on the sofa, hugging his teddy bear, his eyes glued to the clock on the wall. William had just opened the door, and Eli limped out. "Where are you going?" William bent down and rubbed his head. "I just did something that needed to be done. Something to protect you." Eli looked at him, his eyes sparkling. "He won't come back anymore, right?" William smiled, this time no longer a forced smile. "No, son. He won't have the courage anymore." Eli leaned his head on his shoulder, and he knew. This battle had just ended a round. But the journey of being a father had only just begun. The sky was grey but not raining, the thin sunlight shining through the clouds like a thin blanket covering the west coast of Seattle. The waves gently lapped at the sandy beach, leaving behind a soft rustling like the breath of the sea. William held Eli's hand, walking slowly along the deserted beach. The sea breeze blew his shirt tails, messing up his hair slightly, and Eli took small steps, his legs still limping, but no longer trembling as before. They were no longer dragged by fear. They were moving forward, step by step, between freedom and sunshine. "The sea is salty," Eli said softly, covering his nose. William chuckled. "Is this the first time you've smelled this?" "Yes, in the forest. It's all the smell of damp earth, the smell of rotting wood." William bent down, quietly. "So, today is the first time you've seen the sea. And it's also the first time you've seen yourself not locked up anymore, right?" Eli nodded. The boy's eyes looked into the distance, where each small wave lapped at each other as if talking. "My parents never took me anywhere, except the market." He paused. "But at the market, it wasn't to play." William didn't ask any more. He just gently squeezed the small hand in his hand. A seagull swooped down near the water, then flew up again. Eli watched, giggling. It was a clear laugh, real, and no longer hesitant. A sound that William wanted to remember for the rest of his life. Both stopped under a low rock, where the waves only lapped gently around the edge of their feet. Eli sat down, hugging his knees, looking out at the sea. After a long time, the boy tugged at William's shirt. "Uncle Will." William turned around, smiling. "Yeah?" Eli was silent for a few seconds. The wind blew through, blowing a few strands of his hair. Can I call you Dad?" The question was not loud, but it echoed like a thunderclap in William's heart. He froze. His heart beat hard, not because of surprise, but because it came from something most sincere. He knelt down, facing Eli, his hands gently placed on the boy's thin shoulders. "You know, Eli, from the moment you stepped into my life, I hoped that one day you would call me that." Eli lowered his face. If I'm not allowed to, it's okay. I just..." "No," William interrupted. His voice choked. "From now on, Dad is yours. Forever." He pulled Eli into his arms. For the first time, they hugged each other like two real fathers and sons, not out of fear, not out of protection, but out of love. Eli buried his face in his chest. The boy's heart was pounding, not out of fear, but out of happiness. "Dad," Eli said softly, using that word for the first time with complete trust. "I love you." William closed his eyes. The cold sea breeze seemed to melt away. In that moment, he knew he had obtained something that billions of dollars could not buy. A place in the heart of a child. On the way home, Eli sat in the back seat, humming a song he had learned from a cartoon. William looked through the rearview mirror, giving a rare smile. The red light turned on. William stopped the car. He asked, "If you get to choose, where will we go on the weekend?" "The park," Eli replied immediately, "and if possible, I want to try riding a bike too." William nodded. "Okay. Dad will teach you how to ride a bike, but you have to promise one thing." "What is it?" "No matter how many times you fall, you have to get up." Eli grinned. "So it's like when I practice standing up after being beaten, right?" William didn't smile anymore. He nodded slowly. "Right, but now you stand up not to fight anyone, but to go towards what is worthy." That evening, Eli ran into William's study, holding a new drawing. A heart shape. Inside were 3 people, Eli, William, and the old teddy bear. On the top of the paper, the scrawled words, "My family." William didn't say anything. He just reached out. Eli rushed over and hugged him again, no reason needed. And from within that mansion, in the middle of the big city, a simple story was rewritten. Not by law, not by money, but by a word, Dad. Small, but enough to remake a lifetime. Light rain fell gently on the tiled roof of Hargrove Mansion, each drop ticking like a silent warning of an uneasy day. About 3 days ago, William had felt that something was wrong. He usually took a walk around the yard every morning, but lately, in the backyard, between the thick bushes and high fences, he always saw something. Moving. A shadow. Small, blurry, but persistent. At first he thought it was because he was stressed, but after the third time, he decided not to guess anymore. Early that morning, he entered the security control room in the basement. The 2 on-duty security guards stood at attention when they saw him. Rewind the video recordings for the past 3 days. The corner behind the mansion. Cameras number 6 and number 11. Just a few minutes later, the image appeared. A man in a long coat, wearing a hood, sneaking around the fence. Not entering, but just appearing at around 3 to 4 a.m., then disappearing. William leaned in, stopping the image at the moment when the hat fell slightly to the side, revealing half of a familiar face. It's him. He clenched his hand. Buck Thompson. Without hesitation, he took out his phone and called Lieutenant Harris, who had handled the Buck case before. "Lieutenant, it's William Hargrove. Buck is back. I have images. I want to make a plan. This time, he's not going anywhere." The voice on the other end replied briefly, "Send the recording. We will deploy a secret ambush. Be ready, but absolutely do not confront him directly. We will handle the rest." William looked at the surveillance screen, where the blurry shadow was approaching the wall of the mansion. He thinks there's still a chance. But this time, I'm ready. 9:16 a.m. The mansion gate was pulled open. A hooded figure, long coat, carrying a large cloth bag, walking hastily but purposefully, hands shaking, eyes darting, but not stopping. He knew the way. He had observed from afar. Buck Thompson sneaked into the backyard by climbing over the fence, just as William had predicted. Not a sound, but every step was within the detection range of the infrared system. In the control room, William clenched the keyboard. Right into the trap. On the second floor of the mansion, Eli was reading a story by the window. He heard a rustling sound outside. He didn't panic, not crying, not hiding. He stood up and walked to the balcony, and he saw him. "Uncle Buck," he said, his voice surprisingly calm. Buck startled, looking up. He smiled crookedly. "Eli, come with me. This is not the place for you. You think that old man really helps you?" Eli didn't step back. He gripped the railing, his eyes no longer fearful. "I'm not afraid of you anymore." Buck froze. Then a loudspeaker rang out from all over the yard. "Buck Thompson, you have been monitored since you set foot here. You are arrested for illegal entry and attempted kidnapping of a child." From the four corners of the yard, the police rushed in. A special forces team wearing bulletproof vests appeared quickly and decisively. Buck tried to run, but only a few seconds later, he was pinned to the ground. The cold handcuffs tightened on his wrists. William stepped out from the main door, holding the voice recorder from the hidden camera. He approached, looking at Buck being pressed face down on the wet brick floor. "I gave you a chance, but you chose to do evil again." Buck roared, "He's my son." "I have the right." "No," William said coldly. "You used to have the right. But you lost it the first day you raised your hand to hit him." 2 weeks later, the trial was opened at the King County Courthouse, Seattle. The courtroom was closed, but the media was crowded outside. The trial was ranked as the fastest in local history because the evidence was too clear. Lawyer Lisa Grant presented the evidence. Cameras recorded the entire process of illegal entry and unauthorized approach to a minor. Reports of injury assessments on Eli's body, old and new wounds, accompanied by statements from doctors and psychologists. Statements from Maplewood Market residents about Buck forcing Eli to beg, with clips from the previous year. The court was silent. The prosecutor stood up, pointing to Buck, his face now haggard, no longer arrogant. Defendant Buck Thompson is not just a bad father. He is the embodiment of abuse, cruelty, and insensitivity. A person who once abandoned his child in the forest now wants to bring him back, not out of love, but for personal gain. The judge looked at Buck. Does the defendant have anything to say? Buck just lowered his head. Not a word. William sat in the back row, holding Eli's hand. The boy didn't say anything, but when their eyes met, Eli nodded slightly. They didn't need a resounding victory. They just needed justice. The judge announced the verdict. Buck Thompson, 15 years in prison, no parole in the first 10 years. A few weeks before Buck's trial, William had filed a petition to formally adopt Eli Carter, accompanied by full medical records, psychological reports, and a handwritten letter from Eli. I want to live with Dad Will forever. Buck's trial was also where the court considered that adoption petition. When all the evidence of abuse was brought to light, the judge did not take long to issue a ruling. With a solemn but decisive voice, he declared, based on the evidence, care records, and the voluntary wishes of the child, the court recognizes Mr. William Hargrove as the legal guardian of Eli Carter, with full rights and responsibilities as a biological parent. The audience applauded in unison. Eli turned to look at William, his eyes sparkling. Not because of victory, but because now he had officially had a family. William took his hand, gently saying, now you are mine, not only in my heart, but also by law. That evening, Hargrove Mansion was quiet as usual. William and Eli sat watching cartoons in the living room, the old teddy bear lying between them. When the movie reached the part where the main character defeated the bully, Eli tilted his head. Dad, so from now on, no one can catch me anymore, right? William nodded, his eyes still on the screen. Yeah. Because I've built a world where you have the right to live, not run away. Eli smiled, rubbing his head on his shoulder. Thank you, Dad. For staying. William squeezed his shoulder. Thank you for choosing to believe in me. Just before going to bed, Eli suddenly asked, Dad, if one day I grow up, will I forget all the bad things? William pulled the blanket for him. Maybe you won't forget, but you won't hurt anymore, because you have a better memory to remember. Eli nodded slightly. He turned his face into the pillow, his voice whispering, so I will remember the painting. Remember, Dad. William sat there for a while. He watched Eli sleep, a deep, peaceful sleep, like that of children born in safety. Although Eli wasn't born like that, he had made it there. He was no longer the abandoned child. He was light. He was hope. He was the thing that this life could still heal, if someone was patient enough, loving enough, to stay. Early in the morning, light rain fell on the Hargrove Mansion's tiled roof, each drop ticking like a silent warning of an uneasy day. Light filtered through the stained glass windows of the Art Therapy Center in the Green Lake District. The air smelled of watercolors, drawing paper, and dried lavender hanging on the walls. It was a soothing atmosphere, as if every pain that entered here was allowed to soften. Eli sat at a round wooden table, his legs still in a brace. He had grown a few inches taller, his hair neatly cut, his skin no longer as pale as in the early days at Hargrove Mansion. Nearly a year had passed, and he was no longer the child huddled under the table, but a boy learning to stand tall in life. "Which color do you want to use?" the therapist asked gently. Eli quietly chose a blue crayon, then added some brown. Without saying anything, he began to draw. Each stroke of the crayon was a slice of memory. No one instructed him, but he knew he was telling something that words could not convey. A forest appeared. It was raining. A child sat huddled at the base of a tree, holding a wet teddy bear. Above, a man in a black coat was standing, holding an umbrella over him. The therapist looked at the drawing, intending to ask, but then stopped. Eli wrote a scrawled line underneath, each letter carefully drawn as if it were the most important thing in the world. Daddy, with a heart next to it. That afternoon, William picked Eli up from the center. "What did you draw today?" "I drew about the old days, but better than real." Better than real. Because in the picture, you're not angry, not scared. Just rain and you holding an umbrella for me. No bad guys, no yelling. William smiled, but deep down, he felt his nose sting. Back home, Eli took the drawing from his backpack and gave it to him. "Here, I give it to you, because you didn't leave me like others." William took the paper, his hand shaking slightly. He looked at the image of the child sitting in the forest, and in that moment, he understood Eli had forgiven, not just others, but himself. Because in the hearts of children who have been abandoned, forgiveness doesn't come from reason. It comes from being loved again, sincerely. "You know, Eli," William said softly, "the umbrella in the picture isn't mine. It's yours, because you shielded me from the empty years of my life." Eli laughed. "But you're taller than me. But you're braver than me." Both laughed together. A complete laugh, no longer weighed down by shadows. That evening, William framed the drawing. He hung it in the middle of his study, right above his desk, where financial files used to be piled up. Now, there was only a framed picture and a photo of Eli. Lisa, his lawyer, came to dinner. She looked at the picture and paused for a few seconds. "He understands more than we think." "More than I do," William admitted. "He doesn't need revenge. He just needs to believe that even if the world has turned its back, there is still someone who will turn back." Lisa nodded, raising her glass. "Congratulations, William. Not for winning a case, but for winning the heart of a child." Before going to bed, Eli suddenly asked, "Dad, if one day I grow up, will I forget all the bad things?" William pulled the blanket for him. "Maybe you won't forget, but you won't hurt anymore, because you have a better memory to remember." Eli nodded slightly. He turned his face into the pillow, his voice whispering, "So, I will remember the painting. Remember, Dad." William sat there for a while. He watched Eli sleep, a deep, peaceful sleep like that of children born in safety. Although Eli wasn't born like that, he had made it there. He was no longer the abandoned child. He was light. He was hope. He was the thing that this life could still heal, if someone was patient enough, loving enough to stay. Early in the morning, light rain fell on the Hargrove mansion's tiled roof, each drop ticking like a silent warning of an uneasy day. About 3 days ago, William had felt that something was wrong. He usually took a walk around the yard every morning, but lately, in the backyard, between the thick bushes and high fences, he always saw something moving. A shadow, small, blurry, but persistent. At first he thought it was because he was stressed, but after the third time, he decided not to guess anymore. Early that morning, he entered the security control room in the basement. The 2 on-duty security guards stood at attention when they saw him. Rewind the video recordings for the past 3 days. The corner behind the mansion, cameras number 6 and number 11. Just a few minutes later, the image appeared. A man in a long coat, wearing a hood, sneaking around the fence. Not entering, but just appearing at around 3 to 4 a.m., then disappearing. William leaned in, stopping the image at the moment when the hat fell slightly to the side, revealing half of a familiar face. "It's him." He clenched his hand. "Buck Thompson." Without hesitation, he took out his phone and called Lieutenant Harris, who had handled the Buck case before. "Lieutenant, it's William Hargrove. Buck is back. I have images. I want to make a plan. This time, he's not going anywhere." The voice on the other end replied briefly, "Send the recording. We will deploy a secret ambush. Be ready, but absolutely do not confront him directly. We will handle the rest." William looked at the surveillance screen, where the blurry shadow was approaching the wall of the mansion. He thinks there's still a chance, but this time, I'm ready. 9:16 a.m. The mansion gate was pulled open. A hooded figure, long coat carrying a large cloth bag, walking hastily but purposefully, hands shaking, eyes darting, but not stopping. He knew the way. He had observed from afar. Buck Thompson sneaked into the backyard by climbing over the fence, just as William had predicted. Not a sound. But every step was within the detection range of the infrared system. In the control room, William clenched the keyboard, right into the trap. On the second floor of the mansion, Eli was reading a story by the window. He heard a rustling sound outside. He didn't panic, not crying, not hiding. He stood up and walked to the balcony, and he saw him. "Uncle Buck," he said, his voice surprisingly calm. Buck startled, looking up. He smiled crookedly. "Eli, come with me. This is not the place for you. You think that old man really helps you?" Eli didn't step back. He gripped the railing, his eyes no longer fearful. "I'm not afraid of you anymore." Buck froze. Then a loudspeaker rang out from all over the yard. "Buck Thompson, you have been monitored since you set foot here. You are arrested for illegal entry and attempted kidnapping of a child." From the four corners of the yard, the police rushed in. A special forces team wearing bulletproof vests appeared, quickly and decisively. Buck tried to run, but only a few seconds later he was pinned to the ground. The cold handcuffs tightened on his wrists. William stepped out from the main door, holding the voice recorder from the hidden camera. He approached, looking at Buck being pressed face down on the wet brick floor. "I gave you a chance, but you chose to do evil again." Buck roared, "He's my son. I have the right." "No," William said coldly. "You used to have the right, but you lost it the first day you raised your hand to hit him." 2 weeks later, the trial was opened at the King County Courthouse, Seattle. The courtroom was closed, but the media was crowded outside. The trial was ranked as the fastest in local history because the evidence was too clear. Lawyer Lisa Grant presented the evidence. Cameras recorded the entire process of illegal entry and unauthorized approach to a minor. Reports of injury assessments on Eli's body, old and new wounds, accompanied by statements from doctors and psychologists. Statements from Maplewood Market residents about Buck forcing Eli to beg, with clips from the previous year. The court was silent. The prosecutor stood up, pointing to Buck, his face now haggard, no longer arrogant. "Defendant Buck Thompson is not just a bad father. He is the embodiment of abuse, cruelty, and insensitivity. A person who once abandoned his child in the forest now wants to bring him back, not out of love, but for personal gain." The judge looked at Buck. "Does the defendant have anything to say?" Buck just lowered his head. Not a word. William sat in the back row, holding Eli's hand. The boy didn't say anything, but when their eyes met, Eli nodded slightly. They didn't need a resounding victory. They just needed justice. The judge announced the verdict. Buck Thompson, 15 years in prison, no parole in the first 10 years. A few weeks before Buck's trial, William had filed a petition to formally adopt Eli Carter, accompanied by full medical records, psychological reports, and a handwritten letter from Eli. "I want to live with Dad Will forever." Buck's trial was also where the court considered that adoption petition. When all the evidence of abuse was brought to light, the judge did not take long to issue a ruling. With a solemn but decisive voice, he declared, "Based on the evidence, care records, and the voluntary wishes of the child, the court recognizes Mr. William Hargrove as the legal guardian of Eli Carter, with full rights and responsibilities as a biological parent." The audience applauded in unison. Eli turned to look at William, his eyes sparkling, not because of victory, but because now he had officially had a family. William took his hand, gently saying, "Now you are mine, not only in my heart, but also by law." That evening, Hargrove Mansion was quiet as usual. William and Eli sat watching cartoons in the living room, the old teddy bear lying between them. When the movie reached the part where the main character defeated the bully, Eli tilted his head. "Dad, so from now on, no one can bully me anymore, right?" William nodded, his eyes still on the screen. "Yeah, because I've built a world where you have the right to live, not run away." Eli smiled, rubbing his head on his shoulder. "Thank you, Dad, for staying." William squeezed his shoulder. "Thank you for choosing to believe in me." That evening, William carefully attached the conference badge to the memorial wall in the family library, next to the first photo of him carrying Eli in the Willamette forest. 2 moments, 1 journey, from the abandoned child to the one standing in the spotlight, daring to tell his story, not with tears, but with strength. Eli Carter, the child who once thought he wasn't worth living, now he was the one reminding the world, everyone deserves to be loved. This story isn't just about a child being saved, but about the profound healing journey of 2 people who once thought they had nothing left to lose. It poses a quiet but haunting question. Are we, in each of us, willing to be a support for someone, even just once, so that they can live again with faith? Perhaps the greatest lesson lies not in the ending, but in how love, even without blood, can change a person's destiny. What do you think of this story? I just want to say that I'm here to listen to your thoughts. Thank you for staying until the end.